Welcome to the congregation of Yahweh. We're here on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Greetings to those on the DVD program and those on the internet. We hope you enjoy the fellowship and the messages that go out. Today's message is entitled At One with Yahweh. And let us start in the book of Exodus and get a little background. Yahweh brings us together to teach us, to edify us, to build us, to show us things to come. Things that the ancient people couldn't see the end of those things. They saw a glimpse when John the Immerser said, "Behold the Lamb that takes away the sin of the world." He knew something. He saw something. And as we continue to come together, Yahweh continues to show us more. I want to start in Exodus chapter 25. Starting in verse 8. "And they shall make me a set-apart place, and I shall dwell in their midst. According to all that I show you, the pattern of the dwelling place, and the pattern of all its furnishings, make it exactly so." So he's got a plan of a dwelling place to dwell among them. He's showing us something, and I think he's showing us more than one thing. It's very deep. Continuing on in verse 16. "And into the ark you shall put the witness which I give you, and you shall make a lid of atonement of clean gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. And you shall make 2 cherubims of gold, make them of beaten work at the 2 ends of the lid of atonement, and make 1 cherub at one end, and the other cherub at the other end. Make the cherubim from the lid of atonement at its 2 ends. And the cherubim shall be spreading out their wings above, over the lid of atonement with their wings, with their faces towards each other. The faces of the cherubim turned towards the lid of atonement. And you shall put the lid of atonement on top of the ark, and put into the ark the witness which I'll give you," which we know that the 10 Commandments were stored inside of the ark. But you have a people that's called to be holy, called to be set apart. They're given the inheritance of a holy land. In the holy land there's a holy city with a holy mount, a temple, a holy place is there. And in there's a most holy place. Inside of it is a holy law. If you go a little further, there's a holy day. And it's covered with pure gold, which is a mercy seat or a lid of atonement. And the angels are looking into that. Paul said that the angels desire to look into those things. There's decorations all around of gold and scenes of angels. And this lid of atonement is covering the law. And I spoke recently about how the Messiah said that you'll see the angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. And if we go on in verse 21, "And you shall put the lid of atonement on top of the ark, and put into the ark the witness which I give you, and I will meet with you there." the place where the law is held, the place where the angels are hovering, I will meet with you there. And from above the lid of atonement, from between the two cherubims, which are on the ark of witness, I shall speak to you all that which I command you concerning the children of Israel. I believe that this is the heart of the message. We know that the Messiah didn't have to have the law written in his heart. It was already there. The angels were with the Messiah at his birth, in his pain and agony. They spoke with him concerning his death. They were there at the resurrection. They were there at his ascension. And it says that they will be there at his return. All these angelic scenes in the temple, I think, further illustrate the life of the Messiah. That veil that separated the holy from the most holy, Paul said that that veil was his flesh. His flesh is what divided his humanity from his divinity. But continuing on in chapter 26, verse 33. And you shall hang the veil from the hooks, and shall bring the ark of the witness there behind the veil. And the veil shall make a separation for you between the set apart and the most set apart place. And you shall put the lid of atonement upon the ark of witness in the most set apart place. And you shall set the table outside the veil, and the lampstand opposite the table on the side of the dwelling place towards the south, and put the table on the north. And you shall make a covering for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet material and fine woven linen made by a weaver. And you shall make for the covering 5 columns of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, their hooks of gold, and you shall cast 5 sockets of bronze for them. Leviticus chapter 30, verse 5. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, and you shall put before the veil that is before the ark of witness, before the lid of atonement that is over the witness, where I am to meet with you. And Aaron shall burn on it sweet incense morning by morning, as he tends the lamps. He shall burn incense on it. And when Aaron lights the lamps between the evenings, he shall burn incense on it, a continual incense before Yahweh throughout your generations. Do not offer strange incense on it, or a burnt offering, or a grain offering, and do not pour a drink offering on it. And Aaron shall make atonement upon its horns once a year, with the blood of the sin offering of atonement. Once a year he makes atonement upon it throughout your generations. It is most set apart to Yahweh. 31. Verse 6. And I, look, I have appointed with him Oliab, son of Isamach, of the tribe of Dan, and I have put wisdom in the hearts of everyone who is wise-hearted, and they shall make all that I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, and the ark of the witness, and the lid of atonement that is on it, and all the utensils of the tent, and the table and its utensils, and the clean gold lampstand with all its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the basin and its stands, and the woven garments, and the set-apart garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons for serving as priests, and the anointing oil, and sweet incense for the set-apart place, according to all that I have commanded you. Leviticus 16. starting in verse 1. And Yahweh spoke to Moses after the death of his two sons of Aaron, as they drew near before Yahweh and died. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, speak to Aaron your brother, not to come in at all times to the set apart place inside the veil, before the lid of atonement which is on the ark, lest he die. Because I appear in the cloud above the lid of atonement. With this Aaron should come in the set apart place with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering, and of a ram as a burnt offering. He should not put on the set apart linen. He should put on the set apart linen, long shirt with linen trousers on his flesh, and gird himself with a linen girdle, and be dressed with the linen turban. They are set apart garments, and he shall bathe his body in water, and shall put them on. Yahweh wanted this high priest to come in a certain way, with a certain order. He had strict instructions to follow, lest he die. And from the congregation of the children of Israel, he takes 2 male goats as a sin offering, and 1 ram as a burnt offering. And Aaron shall bring the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself. He had to have an offering for himself first, before he presented himself in the presence of Yahweh. And make atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats, and let them stand before Yahweh at the door of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for Yahweh, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the lot for Yahweh fell, and shall prepare it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell is caused to stand alive before Yahweh, to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness to Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall slaughter the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself. And shall take a fire holder filled with burning coals of fire from the altar before Yahweh, with his hands filled with sweet incense beaten fine, and shall bring it inside the veil. So he's bringing in a sweet fragrance to Yahweh. And he shall put the incense on the fire before Yahweh, and the cloud of incense shall cover the lid of atonement which is on the witness, lest he die. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the lid of atonement. On the east side also in front of the lid of atonement he sprinkles some of the blood with his finger 7 times. And he shall slaughter the goat of the sin offering which is for the people, and shall bring its blood inside the veil, and shall do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the lid of atonement and in front of the lid of atonement. And he shall make atonement for the set apart place, because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions in all their sins. Even the holy place had to be purged with blood, because of the transgressions of the people. And so he does for the tent of meeting, which is dwelling with them in the midst of their uncleanness. And no man should be in the tent of meeting when he goes in to make atonement in the set apart place, until he comes out. And he shall make atonement for himself and for his household and for all the assembly of Israel. And he shall go out to the altar that is before Yahweh and make atonement for it. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar all around. And he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it, and set it apart from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. And when he had finished atoning for the set apart place, and the tent of meeting, and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. Then Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, and shall confess over it all the crookedness of the children of Israel, and all their transgressions and all their sins, and shall put them on the head of the goat, and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a fit man. And the goat shall bear on itself all their crookedness, to a land cut off. So we see a transferal. The sins of all the people, the uncleanness of the temple because of the people, it is all transferred. Continuing on, and this is all the plan of salvation. He teaches this plan from the first feast in the spring to the last feast in the fall. This is Yahweh's dealing with man, the harvest of mankind, ingrained in this feast keeping. But continuing on, Aaron shall then come, this is verse 23, Aaron shall then come into the tent of meeting, and shall take off the linen garments which he put on when he went into the set apart place, and shall leave them there. And he shall bathe his body in water in the set apart place, and shall put on his garments, and shall come out and prepare his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people, and burn the fat of the sin offering on the altar. And he who sent away the goat to Azazel washes his garments, and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward he comes into the camp. And the bull for the sin offering, and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the set apart place, is brought outside the camp. And they shall burn their skins and their flesh and their dung with fire. And he who burns them washes his garments, and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward he comes into the camp. And this shall be for you a law forever. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, afflict your beings, and do no work, the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. For on that day he makes atonement for you, to cleanse you, to be clean from all your sins. Now, this day was a foreshadow of a day when all mankind can be clean from sin. A day when death and sin are no more. It is a Sabbath of rest for you, and you shall afflict your beings, a law forever. And the priest who is anointed and ordained to serve as priest in his father's place shall make atonement, and shall put on the linen garments, the set-apart garments, and he shall make atonement for the most set-apart place, and make atonement for the tent of meeting, and for the altar, and make atonement for the priests, and for all the people of the assembly. And this shall be for you a law forever, to make atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as Yahweh commanded Moses. Leviticus 23. Verse 1. And Yahweh spake to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, The appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings, my appointed times are these. These days do not belong to man. These days belong to Yahweh. He appointed them. And down in verse 27, on the 10th day of this 7th month is the day of atonement. It shall be a set apart gathering for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And you do no work on that same day, for it is the day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Why was it so important to hold on to the purity of the way this was to be kept? Because it was a teaching tool. It was an illustration. And, you know, for instance, when Yahweh told Moses to speak to the rock, and he struck it, he was out of line. And when we read through the illustration of the way that they were to build this temple, every minute detail meant something. Chapter 25, verse 9. You shall then sound a ram's horn to pass through on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, cause a ram's horn to pass through all your land. Now, let's flip over to Hebrews. Hebrews is a door of knowledge to these feasts of Yahweh. In Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14, therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself similarly shared in the same, so that by means of his death he might destroy him, having the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver those who throughout life were held in slavery by fear of death. For doubtless he does not take hold of messengers, but he does take hold of the seed of Abraham. So in every way he had to be made like his brothers, in order to become a compassionate and trustworthy high priest in matters related to Elohim, to make atonement for the sins of the people. For in what he had suffered, himself being tried, he is able to help those who are tried. Chapter 4, verse 14. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Yahshua the Son of Elohim, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who was tried in all respects as we are, apart from sin. Therefore, let us come boldly to the throne of favor, in order to receive compassion and find favor for timely help. Chapter 6, verse 17. In this way, Elohim, resolving to show even more clearly to the heirs of promise the unchangeableness of his promise, confirmed it by an oath, so that by two unchangeable matters in which it is impossible for Elohim to lie, we might have strong encouragement, we who have fled for refuge, to lay hold of the expectation set before us, which we have as an anchor of the life, both safe and firm, and entering into that within the veil. We enter into this within the veil. Well, what are we entering into? We're approaching the throne of grace, where Yahshua has entered as a forerunner for us. He has gone in through the veil into the holy place as a scout. A forerunner is somebody who goes ahead before us. He has shown us the way, having become a high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. And he continues to teach us the illustration of Melchizedek and shows us that he was a shadow of our Messiah. In verse 11, 7:11, truly then, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people were given the Torah, why was there still need for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not to be called according to the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed of necessity, there takes place a change of law also. For he of whom this is said belongs to another tribe, from which no one had attended at the altar. For it is perfectly clear that our master arose from Judah, a tribe about which Moses never spake of concerning priesthood. And this is clearer still. If another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become not according to the Torah of a fleshly command, but according to the power of an endless life. For he does witness, you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. Our Messiah has come a priest forever due to his endless life. For there is indeed a setting aside of the former command because of its weakness and unprofitableness. For the Torah perfected nothing, but the bringer in of a better expectation, through which we draw near to Elohim. And it was not without an oath, for they indeed become priests without an oath, but he became priests with an oath by him who said to him. He became a priest by the oath of Yahweh, who said, Yahweh has sworn and shall not regret. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. By as much as this, Yeshua has become a guarantor of a better covenant. And indeed, those that became priests were many, because they were prevented by death from continuing. These men could not continue as priests forever because they were held by death. But he, because he remains forever, has an unchangeable priesthood. Therefore he is also able to save completely those who draw near to Elohim through him. How? Through the veil. And he is ever living to make intercession for them. I want to flip over to John real quick, and it tells us what kind of interceding he is doing on our behalf. 1 John chapter 2, my little children, I write this to you so that you do not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an intercessor with the Father, Yeshua Messiah, a righteous one. And he himself is an atoning offering for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for all the world. He is an atoning sacrifice for the entire world if they receive him. Back to Hebrews 27:26. For it was fitting that we should have such a high priest, kind, innocent, undefiled, having been separated from sinners and exalted above the heavens, who does not need, as those high priests, to offer up slaughter offerings day by day, first for his own sins and then for those of the people. For this he did once for all when he offered up himself. We read that the high priest went into the most holy place once a year. He had to go in with blood. He had to go in with a covering. He had to go in cleansed. He had to go in with incense. It says our high priest has accomplished this once by the offering of himself, by his own blood. For the Torah appoints as high priests men who have weakness, but the word of the oath which came after the Torah appoints the Son, having been perfected forever. Now the summary of what we are saying is, we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves in the set apart place and of the true tent which Yahweh set up, and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and slaughters, so it was also necessary for this one to have somewhat to offer. For if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the Torah, who serve a copy and a shadow of the heavenly. As Moses was warned when he was about to make the tent, for he said, see that you make all according to the pattern shown you on the mount. He said, I am teaching you how to make a tabernacle, and I will dwell among you. Let me pause right there real quick, and I just want to read something in John 2. And then I'm going to flip back. In John 2:13, and the Passover of the Jews was near, and Yeshua went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the set-apart place those selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers sitting, and having made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the set-apart place, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the money changers' coins, and overturned them. And he said to those selling doves, "Take these away. Do not make the house of my Father a house of merchandise." And his taught ones remembered that it was written, "The ardor of your house has eaten me up." And the Jews answered and said to him, "What sign do you show us, since you are doing these?" Yeshua answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I shall raise it up." The Jews said to him, "It took 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it up in 3 days?" But he spoke of the temple of his body. So, thousands of years before this, he said, "Let me make a temple or a tabernacle that I might dwell among them." Well, the Messiah said, "My body is a temple." Why? Because he was the dwelling place. What did we read about the dwelling place? The dwelling place, the temple, contained the law. It was the presence of Yahweh. It was where Yahweh spoke. Isn't this a perfect picture of our Messiah? But he asks us to be temples as well. He asks the congregation to be a temple. And what's in the temple? His word, his law, his presence, his voice. Back to Hebrews. (8:6). But now he has obtained a more excellent service, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for the second. There was nothing wrong with the first, other than the people who couldn't keep it. That's why he says in verse 8, "For finding fault with them," he says, "See, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah a renewed or new covenant, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they did not continue in my covenant." We know that Yahweh says, "My covenant I will not break, neither will I alter the thing that comes out of my lips." But it says they did not continue therein. "And I disregarded them, says Yahweh, because this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh, giving my laws in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, because they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them." When this comes to total realization, everyone will know him. Everyone will have his law. We won't have to teach each one his neighbor anymore, because everyone will know. Everyone will have entered in through the veil, through the Messiah. "Because I shall forgive their unrighteousness and their sins and their lawlessness, I shall no longer remember." By saying renewed, he has made the first old. Now, what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing. There are some that teach, oh, well, this is evidence that the Mosaic law was done away with, and we're under some new Christian thing. They've started their own religion. Chapter 9. "Now the first covenant indeed had regulations of worship, and the earthly set-apart place for a tent was prepared, the first part in which was the lampstand. Our Messiah was the light of life that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. and the table, and the showbread, the bread of life, which is the set apart place. And after the second veil, the part of the tent which is called the most set apart, or the most holy, to which belonged the golden censer and the ark of the covenant, overlaid on all sides with gold, in which were the golden pot that held the manna. Messiah taught us about the manna. He said, I am the bread that comes down from heaven. And the rod of Aaron that budded. Our Messiah was that rod. And the tablets of the covenant, and above it the cherubim of glory, were overshadowing the place of atonement, about which we do not now speak in detail. And these having been prepared like this, the priest always went in to the first part of the tent, accomplishing the services. But into the second part, the high priest went alone once a year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for sins of ignorance of the people. The set-apart spirit signifying this, that the way into the most set-apart place was not yet made manifest, while the first tent was standing. Well, up until that time, the Spirit was signifying that the way into the holy place was not yet made manifest. Well, let's flip over to Mark chapter 15. And this was the greatest sign given to man as to the way of the holy place, the most holy place. Mark 15:27. And with him they impaled two robbers, one on his right and the other on his left. And the scripture was filled which says, and he was reckoned with the lawless. And those passing by were blaspheming, shaking their heads and saying, You who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourselves and come down from the stake. And likewise the chief priests and the scribes, mocking to one another, said, He saved others, he is unable to save himself. The Messiah, the sovereign of Israel, come down now from the stake, so that we see and believe. And those who were impaled with him were reproaching him. And when the 6th hour came, darkness came over all the land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is translated, My El, why have you forsaken me? And some of those standing by, when they heard it, said, See, he is calling for Elijah. And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a reed and offered it to him to drink, saying, Leave him. Let us see if Elijah does come to take him down. And Yeshua cried out with a loud voice and breathed his last. And the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The veil was torn from the top to the bottom. And when the captain who was standing opposite him saw that he cried out like this and breathed his last, he said, Truly this man was the Son of Elohim. Back to Hebrews. Nine 8. So the set-apart spirit signified this, that the way into the most set-apart place was not yet made manifest while the first tent was standing, which was a parable for the present time, in which both gifts and slaughters are offered, which are unable to perfect the one serving as to his conscience, only as to foods and drinks and divers washings and fleshly regulations imposed until a time of setting matters straight. But Messiah, having become a high priest of the coming good matters through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, entered into the most set apart place once for all, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, having obtained everlasting redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the defiled sets apart for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of the Messiah, who through the everlasting Spirit offered himself unblemished to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from the dead works to serve the living Elohim. And because of this, he is the mediator of a renewed covenant, so that death, having taken place for redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, those who are called might receive the promise of the everlasting inheritance. For where a covenant is, it is necessary for the death of the covenanted one to be established. For a covenant over those dead is firm, since it is never valid while the covenanted one is living. Therefore, not even the first covenant was instituted without blood. For when, according to the Torah, every command had been spoken by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of calves and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant which Elohim commanded you." And in the same way he sprinkled with blood both the tent and all the vessels of the service. And according to the Torah, almost all is cleansed with blood. And without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness. It was necessary then that the copies of the heavenly ones should be cleansed with these, but the heavenly ones themselves with better slaughter offerings than these. For Messiah has not entered into a set-apart place made by hands, figures of the true, but into heaven itself now, to appear in the presence of Yahweh on our behalf. He stands there on our behalf. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priests enter into the set-apart place year by year with blood not his own. For if so, he would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now he has appeared once for all at the end of the ages to put away sin by the offering of himself. And as it awaits men to die once, and after this the judgment, so also the Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, shall appear a second time apart from sin to those waiting for him unto deliverance. For the Torah, having a shadow of the good matters to come, and not the image itself of the matters, was never able to perfect those who draw near with the same slaughter offerings which they offer continually year by year. Otherwise would they not have ceased to be offered, because those who served, once cleansed, would have had no more consciousness from sin. But in those offerings is a reminder of sins year by year. Every time they took an offering, it was a reminder of sin. How could you have a clean conscience if you're reminded of it year by year? But if we know that our Messiah has done it once, as long as we don't continue to live in sin, we can live this life in a clear conscience. But it's when we turn back that our conscience can be defiled. Verse 4, for it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Therefore, coming into the world, he says, slaughtering and meal offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. A perfect sacrifice was prepared. Burnt offerings and offerings for sins you did not delight. Then I said, see, I come in the roll of the book, as it has been written concerning me, to do your desire, O Elohim, saying, above slaughter and meal offerings and burnt offerings and offerings for sin you did not desire nor delight in, which are offered according to the Torah. Then he said, See, I come to do your desire, O Elohim. He takes away the first to establish the second. Some would want us to interpret this as he took away the first covenant and the first laws to establish a new covenant with new laws. He took away the first order of sacrifice to establish a perfect sacrifice. By that desire we have been set apart through the offering of the body of Yeshua Messiah once for all. And indeed every priest stands day by day doing service and repeatedly offering the same slaughter offerings which are never able to take away sins. But he, having offered one slaughter offering for sins for all time, sat down at the right hand of Elohim, waiting from that time onward until his enemies are made a footstool for his feet. That enemy is death. For by one offering he has perfected for all times those who are being set apart. And the set apart Spirit also bears witness to us. For after having said before, This is my covenant that I shall make with them after those days, says Yahweh, giving my laws into their hearts and in their minds I shall write them, and their sins and their lawlessness I shall remember no more. Now where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer a slaughter offering for sin. So brothers, having boldness to enter into the set-apart place by the blood of Yeshua, by a new and living way which he instituted for us through the veil. We enter in the veil, the same veil that was ripped, which was his flesh. We come into the holy presence of Yahweh. And having a high priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart, in completeness of belief, having our hearts sprinkled from a wicked conscience, and our bodies washed with clean water. Let us hold fast the confession of our expectation without yielding. So we see that our Messiah was... that temple was a shadow of our Messiah and the order in which we are come to Yahweh. And let me flip over to John chapter 14. We see that inside of this temple we come into the presence of Yahweh himself. But he asks us to be a temple. In 14 verse 1 it says, Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in Elohim. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many staying places. And if not, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. What place is that? What place has he prepared? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you might be also. And where I go, you know the way, and the way you know. Thomas said to him, Master, we do not know where you are going, and how are we able to know the way? Yeshua said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So he's going to the Father to prepare a place for us. And he is the way to the Father. So that is our hope. That is our expectation. And hasn't it been that way from the beginning? Hasn't Yahweh wanted to dwell with man? Go back to Genesis. The plan was put in motion. In verse 23, Yeshua answered, If anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him. And we shall come to him and make our abode with him. So what happens when the Father and the Son comes and makes an abode with us? Not only personally, he's making an abode in the life of each individual believer, but he's making an abode in this congregation. And he will also make an abode on this earth when thy kingdom comes and thy will is done on earth as it is in heaven. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Verse 19. Do you not know that your body is the dwelling place or the temple of the Holy Spirit? The set apart Spirit who is in you. It is inside of you, which you have from Elohim, and you are not your own, for you were bought with a price. Therefore esteem Elohim in your body and in your spirit, which are Elohim. In the same way that temple, that tabernacle was carried around, and the presence of Yahweh was in it, and he spoke from it, the same temple are you. The presence of Yahweh is to be in the life of his people. The word is supposed to come from his people. Ephesians chapter 2. Verse 18. Because through him, who? The veil. Through him we have access to the Father by one Spirit. So then you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the set apart ones and members of the household of Elohim, having been built upon the foundation of the emissaries and prophets, Yeshua Messiah himself being chief cornerstone, in whom all the building being joined together grows into a set apart dwelling place, a holy temple in Yahweh, in whom you also are being built together into a dwelling of Elohim in the Spirit. As we meditate on what this day means, we need to remember that we're getting a taste of the future, a day when we're actually at one with him. And let us pray for those who can't see the end of that. And let us thank our Messiah, who entered into the veil for us and showed us the way. Hallelujah.